Welcome, everyone. Dr. Anthony Criniti IV here, also known as Dr. Finance, your host for the Dr. Finance Live podcast. We have an unbelievable guest today, Lisa Patrick. She is an amazing networker, amazing connector, awesome entrepreneur, highly successful. She has a new book that just came out, and we're going to talk about a lot of things today, especially that new book. So, and also she's my clubhouse buddy. She's in the club with me, and we're always rocking the stage. So let's give a warm welcome for Lisa Patrick. Welcome, Lisa. How are you?
Oh, I'm so excited to be here, Dr. Finance. Woo, let's go.
Let's do it. All right. So, Lisa, let's get started. And before we talk about your story, I'm doing this new thing now. Maybe if you can summarize your bio in like 30 seconds, just to give our audience a little understanding of who you are, and then we'll get to your actual story.
Sure. So typically I work with thought leaders who are, knowledge leaders who are either in the C-suite looking to transition, or they're in the entrepreneurship world and they're looking for that clarity and those right resources to really elevate the game of life and business. Or they've got a startup and they got the idea on the napkin and they don't know how to execute. And so I just bring my plethora of resources and clarity to the mission, and away we go.
That's awesome. Thank you, Lisa. All right, so let's get into the story now. So Lisa, you got a very interesting story. I'm in Philadelphia. You're way up there in Canada, but I feel so connected to you, even though we're probably thousands of miles apart. Let's hear your story. So I heard you grew up on a farm in Canada. Is that right?
I did. Yeah. So I'm an only daughter to two amazing humans that have made me to who I am today. I'm fortunate. I'm not the story that some people have where, they, didn't have great parents, didn't have great upbringing. I had an outstanding upbringing, and I had two parents that were highly invested in my success as a kid and still to this day. And so, yes, farm girl at heart. I never thought that, years later that I would miss sitting in the tractor for hours on end, driving around and around and around a field just so that I could get to the party, of course, because, the work had to be done first and the partying could happen later. So, yeah. So, like I said, two great parents. My dad was an RCMP officer, Royal Canadian Mounted Police, and he retired from the police to start a farm in the 70s when, interest rate was 21% or 23%, and he never really had any money to his name, and he wasn't a farmer. He grew up in Ontario and was a lumberjacker, and so it was an interesting time. My mom was a nurse and never thought she'd marry a farmer. She thought she married a cop, and that didn't work out that way. And so, yeah, so I learned the art of hard work, and I learned the art of entrepreneurship at a very young age. And because I was the only kid, I was not just the boy and the girl. I was both, right? I had to work in the fields and help out. And but with that came a lot of freedom and flexibility to really be who I am today and who I was then. And so I'm so fortunate and so grateful for such an amazing upbringing.
That is awesome, Lisa. And, I'm starting to notice a pattern. Like Laura Langmeyer, she actually grew up on a farm in Nebraska, and she became extremely successful. And, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, it's something about farming, growing up on a farm, you're seeing life from a different angle. You're seeing it from its raw material side, where we're actually getting our products and services from the ground up. And like this has an amazing effect on people because they get closer to nature and have a more realistic perspective of life. Would you agree?
Well, that's interesting. I've never really thought of it that way, in all honesty, but I like where you're going with that. I think so. Being on a farm, you don't have a choice, right? Like, you are dependent on nature, number one, very much so. When you wake up in the morning, if it's raining, you don't go to work. If the sun is shining or whether it's dreary out, you go to work. And there's not a choice in that matter, right? Like, you don't have a choice. You don't wake up in the morning and decide, well, I don't feel like it today, right? Like my heart's just not in it. That's just not the reality of farming. You know, you make hay when the sun is shines, right? And so I think that at a very young age, it was just part of my nature you just got up and you did the work. And I don't ever really recall a time where it wasn't a consideration of, you know, I'm not gonna get up today and do the work. I'm just gonna do the work because that's the way it is. And I can recall as a kid at school, especially in my high school years, you know, in September, there was a lot of us not at school because we were working on the farm. It was a farming community, and that was the reality. School might have started, but what, you know, you've got to take the grain off the fields, and that's just the reality of it. And so work was just it was never, I don't even know how to say it, like it just was part of what you did, period.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And you know, growing up completely different than you in the tough streets of South Philadelphia, you know, our
Yeah.
games were not tipping cows, we were climbing fences. But you know, I often wondered what it would be like on the other side of the fence, excuse the pun, like growing up on a farm. And
Yeah.
I'm finding that it doesn't really matter where you're from, really, like your kind of environment. You can still grow up as a successful entrepreneur if you utilize the strengths and work with the weaknesses to improve it of that environment that you grew up in. So in your case, in Laurel's case, like growing up on a farm, actually you used that momentum to build you. You know, growing up here in rough streets of Philly, you know, I used the negative things that I saw to fuel my career path.
Yep.
Two different environments, completely different environments, but somehow we both maximized our time
Well,
well.
I think there's some guiding pillars, right? Like
Yeah.
you know, one of the guiding pillars that just defines everything that I do is, you know, get it done, find a way and get it done. And I don't think it matters if you grew up in the streets of Philly or, you know, on a tractor in a small town in Saskatchewan with 1,200 people. You just find a way to get it done. And period. Doesn't matter where you came from or you know, the experience is bad or good. The reality is you use that guiding pillar to drive you and what you need to do. And I think a lot of people forget that, you know, sometimes it's not about what you know, it is about who you know and how you know how to do it.
I like that. I like that. And that kind of threads the commonality between our different situations, yet very
Yeah.
similar on where we were going.
Yeah.
All right, thank you, Lisa. So what happened after the farm life? Or let's go back to the farm life. How was it like growing up on a farm? What's the
Oh my
good and the
God.
bad side?
I picked more rock on by hand because we were a registered seed farm. And so you couldn't have it, you know, we grew peas and we grew lentils and we grew, you know, rape and barley and all that wonderful things. But picked up more rocks and learned the value of consistency and repetition at an early age. And it's always about the end goal, right? The goal was never to pick up the rocks. The end goal was to get the grain, to get the peas into the combine, to get it into the granary, to get it to the market, right?
Right.
And so I think that's how I learned process and systems so well. And everything that you do has to have a process or a system or a process, depending where you are in the world and how you say it. But so integration in business and in life, like I think systematically and process driven. If I'm going to do something, then I need to figure out the blueprint of how to do that so that I can repeat it. That's the only way that you can scale. It's the only way that you can scale. You might fumble your way through to that first, you know, 6 digits of success. And some people define success by dollar values, but you'll never get to the double digits and the triple digits without process and systems.
That's an amazing point. And we're still on your story. I'm just digressing for a second. I just thought of something. You growing up on the farm, right? You're connected more to the raw products and services. People who grow up in the city. This is one, you know, by the way, my last book, The Survival of the Richest, just to give you
Yep.
a heads up, I'm a big survival guy, connected the two sciences. And what I found is that a lot of people don't even know where their food is from. They don't even realize that food is not grown in a supermarket. And this sounds so crazy, but it really is true. I mean, a lot of the survival people that I study, the top experts in the world, they say the same thing. And
I'm
you growing up on a
giggling.
farm, yeah.
Yeah,
What'd you
I'm
do?
giggling because this reminds me of a story of a guy that I dated, and he was a city boy. And so where I grew up, the biggest city, like the biggest urban would have been Saskatoon. And so I met this guy when I was in university, or what I like to call Bar 101 that first year. But anyways, so I met him, and he was a true city boy. He'd never been to a farm, and he came to the farm one day during harvest, and my dad made him change cultivator shovels on, and it was so funny because it was the first time in my life that, to your point, Dr. Finance, was that here was a kid who'd come from the city that, I lived and breathe. I mean, cultivator was common knowledge. A shovel was a common knowledge, right? Grain was common knowledge. A granary was common knowledge, right? A grain auger. He'd never seen a grain auger. He'd never knew what a cultivator shovel was. He didn't know what a crescent wrench was. He didn't know what a socket was to change the cultivator shovel. I was totally blown away that it was the first time in my life that I had realized that there was so much more out there than just the farm, and that a lot of people didn't experience so many great things about the farm. But imagine what I could experience about city life and what the teachings of that would have for me. And so that was really the first time, thanks to Joel, that I really got a true understanding that the world was so much bigger than my little world in small town Wilkie, Saskatchewan.
Yeah, so you just actually approached the question from the other side of the tunnel. Like that's true. And I don't know what any of those three things that you mentioned are either, by the way.
Oh,
So
good. Don't
yeah,
need to.
but an excellent point you made there. Whatever you don't know, that's why I jump into survival and I try to learn a lot about wilderness survival, because that was the area that I wasn't used to.
Yeah.
But I found the connection. We all have this common theme of surviving, right? It doesn't matter if you grew up on a farm or in the city. We're just
Yep.
doing it in our own way. We're mastering our own environment. So yeah, thank you, Lisa. I appreciate it. So what happened after the farm?
So I went, like I said, I alluded to, I did Bar 101, which was actually university, first year university. I actually took a year off from school. I was 17 when I graduated from high school. And so I moved to the big city immediately afterwards. And I got a lot of lessons there, and I worked, and I was also a ski instructor. So I worked at a hill, and yes, Saskatchewan actually has hills where
Wow.
you can downhill ski on. And so I worked at a hill, and so I had 3 jobs at the time, and I remember gas being 33 cents. 33 cents a liter. I mean, I'm aging myself now, but it was 33 cents a liter. And minimum wage was, I think I paid like $300 for my rent. Like, it was crazy, but it was a wonderful time in my life where I got to learn a lot of great lessons about life in general, because now I had moved away and I was on my own. I was 17 years old, and I had to pay for my own bills, and I had to manage money. I sure could have used Laurel and Sharon Lechter at that time. Yeah, so it was really an interesting time. And then I went to college. As a kid, I always, and anybody's watching this who knows me knows that I always wanted to be a cop. It was just, I was one of those kids that said, like, right from day one, that's what I wanted to be. That was my goal. I wanted to be an undercover narcotics cop, actually, to my parents' demise of, they were horrified at that thought. But so I went to law enforcement, and I took my education in law enforcement, and came out of law enforcement, worked for the city of Edmonton in sex crimes for about 6 months, and went, this is not for me. Went back to university. And during that time, I worked, and I worked for a private investigation firm, and that was my first time I dipped my toes in the private sector. And being an entrepreneur and understanding process and systems and so forth, I worked for about 6 months for that firm and went, oh my God, this is an absolute shit show. I can do this better. I can't work for somebody else. And so I started my own private investigation business, and exited from that about 6 years later. And so it's been an interesting road, but that was my first real dip into entrepreneurship of my own. Not the farm and all the other things that came along with learning the craft and the art of entrepreneurship by my dad and my mom. But so that's kind of where, and fast forward to many years later, and I've met a lot of great people, and here I am today. I'm still learning. I don't consider myself successful. I look at things very differently than I probably did 10 years ago. A lot of life lessons has happened along the way, good and bad, but there's always a silver lining. And it's just a matter of really being curious about what is the lesson that we've learned along the way, and how do we improve and make our lives better from it, but more importantly, the people that are around us.
That is awesome. Thank you, Lisa. So where
Yeah.
was your college in relationship, your university in relationship to where you lived? Like how far away did you have to move to?
Yeah, so about an hour and a half when I first started, and then I moved 4.5 hours away. So I moved to Edmonton to take my law enforcement education, and I stayed here.
You just stayed in Edmonton afterwards. Wow. That's where
Yeah,
you're at right now, Edmonton?
yeah.
Okay.
Yes, exactly.
So for those non-Canadians, especially those not used to Western Canada, where is Saskatchewan? I'm sorry. Uh,
Saskatchewan?
yes, and
Yeah.
in regards to Edmonton.
So most people know where Vancouver is,
Yes.
Vancouver, British Columbia, and Edmonton, Alberta is the province next to it, and then Saskatchewan is the province next to that.
Oh, I see. Okay. Wow. So you did basically when you moved on your own, and even an hour away is far, like to drive. So that's enough to ensure that you're learning
Well, it's
independency.
funny because we have a running joke here. My mom and dad live in about 2.5, 2.3 quarters of an hour away from me right now, and we giggle because they'll come up for coffee in the morning and leave in the afternoon. But I think that's just because we were, Saskatchewan, you were, 11 kilometers, which would be like 8 miles away from anything, right? Your nearest neighbor was a couple miles away. So,
Oh, you're used to it then, that kind of
mhm,
distance. Wow.
yeah.
Interesting. All right. Well, thank you. And so talk about Canada. How do you like living in Canada?
I love Canada. I love the Four Seasons. I have daughters, they're twins, and they are in grade 11 this year. And so they have one more year of school, and then they're going to venture out on their own and pave their path. And so I don't know. I don't know what the world will come to after that. Will Edmonton will be home. Saskatchewan will always be home. It's just you can't take Saskatchewan out of me. But who knows where I'll live 6 months of the year? I'd love to live in the U.S.
Well, Philadelphia is a nice place.
Too cold. If I'm gonna go, you know what? If I'm gonna go, I'm gonna go south.
Too cold. We're like 5 hours south of you or something like that.
I know, but
Or 10.
you know what? I love the Four Seasons, but I don't want to live in the Four Seasons all year round
Yeah, I
anymore.
hear you. I hear you. All right. Thank you, Lisa. All right. So let's talk about that private and guest investigator thing. What attracted you to become a private investigator?
Well, I think, initially, of course, because with my law enforcement background and my investigative, I'm curious by nature. And we'll talk a little bit more about curiosity in a little bit, but learning has always been just part of who I am. The good and the bad and the ugly of learning, right? There's all three verticals of that. And so I think that, PI work really filled that bucket. Nothing was ever the same. Every, file that I got, every subject that I got, and let me be clear, I was not an investigator of somebody cheating. I did a lot of work in the insurance industry and also in child custody cases. Those were the two verticals that I mostly stayed in. And so there was never no, you know, monotony of the job. And I love the fact that it, you know, took me all kinds of different places, and it really forced me back then to really use the opportunity of curiosity to really help find out the answers that I needed on behalf of my clients. And so that's where I really started to ask questions differently and look at things, and what else might be happening that others might not see.
So, private investigators, basically, it has the same elements of a detective. I'm assuming, right? Like
Yeah, exactly, exactly.
same
Except for I'm
qualities.
not, you know, finding murderers.
That's
And the pay is way better, let me
wait,
tell you, way better.
really that much?
Oh, yeah, private sector versus public sector. Yeah, there's no comparison.
Wow. So you wanted to be a cop though originally. So how come you didn't go that path? And
Well, for a number of reasons. The time that I was in sex crimes, I saw a lot of things. I heard a lot of things, and I saw process in that detachment that I didn't agree with.
mhm.
And I wanted control. I wanted control of my life. I wanted control of how I investigated. And I think, you know, looking back now, that was probably why I just never chose that path. Plus, I knew, I got to see firsthand in the trenches what it does emotionally to you.
Yeah.
And, you know, if I wanted a life, if I wanted to get married and I wanted to have kids, um, I wanted to have control over what that looked like. And I didn't want those influences in that part of my life. I'm pretty private for the most part. You don't see a lot on all my social medias about my family, my kids, my husband. Like I just, that's the piece that stays, you know, I don't think needs to be exploited by any stretch. And so I think that's probably why I never went down that path.
Yeah, and that's smart. That's very, very smart to separate the two. Um, so yeah, I mean, and plus, like you were talking about the emotional consequences of
Yeah,
becoming law enforcement. It's similar to the same experiences many of the military go through.
absolutely.
It's just too much weight on the mind to see that all day long.
Yeah,
So
yeah. Transition, you know, whether you're military or you're a police officer or you're a firefighter or you're a paramedic transitioning out. I think the military probably have it, and I'm only speaking not by experience, but just by what I've seen, probably the hardest to transition out to civilian life. You know, I do a lot of work with C-suite executives, and I often say that I compare their transition out of the C-suite to entrepreneurship, much like the military transition out to civilian life. It's a whole foreign different world.
that is a great analogy.
Yeah,
It's
like,
true.
yeah, anyways.
All right, thank you, Lisa. All right, so we're gonna get on to the same, continuing on where we just started here. Do you think do your skills as a former private investigator help you to network successfully? So I see a
Oh my
big
goodness.
connection between those skill sets.
Yeah, so I think the biggest mistake that most people make is that they rely too much on their core skills, the technical skills that they learned in school, and they don't realize that the magic actually happens on the edge of your experiences, right? On the edge of that core, like when you have a core competency,
Yeah.
um, and you learn, let's say you're an accountant and you learn the financial skills, the technical skills to become an accountant.
Mhm.
Why is Sharon Lecter, why are you, Dr. Finance, so successful? It's
Well, I'm
not
not
the
an
core
accountant.
skills. It's not the core skills that made you successful. It's the edge skills that really brought you to, you know, the level of success that you are today and that you continue to achieve and try to achieve. And I think that's, you know, where we find the magic, and the superpowers, our unique abilities, as Dan Sullivan says, right? Is really understanding that at the edge, that's where the opportunity is, that's where the magic is. And curiosity is a really great way of trying to decipher what those skills are and how do we hone them.
Yeah, it's a beautiful point, Lisa. You know, and we're definitely gonna talk about your book, Intelligent Curiosity, in a little bit.
Mhm.
So yeah, let's hold off on that one because that's a really good discussion. So tell us about your interior design business. I didn't even know you had that up your sleeve. Geez, you did
Yeah,
a lot
I
of
had
things.
that. You really did do your research, Dr. Tony,
Hey, you've
Dr.
watched my
Fina.
podcast. You know that's what I'm
Yeah.
about.
Yeah. So that was a time in my life where I've always had an interest in clothing and design and interior design. And while my daughters were very young, I needed something to do that intellectually stimulated me. And so I thought, you know what? I'm just going to start an interior design company. And so I did. And I did draperies and I did all kinds of wonderful things with that. But it fed the creative side of my brain. And it was a way for me to get out into the world, if you will, outside of diapers and pablum and all the wonderful things, potty training and pull-ups, and actually have conversations with other people and feed that creative side of my brain. And so it was a moment of time that fit something that I needed in my lifestyle at that time.
And I just had a thought as I'm staring at your magenta or pink chair. I'm not good with colors, but I know that you're known as Lisa in the red chair on Clubhouse.
Yeah, yes.
Is this
Yes,
where it all
the
comes from?
red
This
chair has
interior
become
design thing?
yeah, the red chair has become symbolic of a lot of things that I do now, and it's following me everywhere I go. It's starting a new TV like a live stream show actually called That Problem Solved,
I
and it's
like it a
about
lot, actually. I think it's pretty
yeah, it's
cool.
about people sitting in the red chair and you know, bringing experts to the table to solve that one problem that's just facing us that we don't know how to solve. And the answer is in the who. It's not in the how. It's in the who.
Yeah, and by the way, your chair in the background, I think it's pink or something.
Yeah, it
That
looks pink. It's actually red, but
is it
welcome to
red?
the. It
Okay.
is red actually, but it looks pink.
You know, but the whole setup, the point I was making, the whole setup. See, I was in the real estate business, so we hired people like yourself, interior designers, to come and stage the house.
Yeah.
So looking at that, I can see a professional there.
Oh,
Put that
thanks.
together.
I try. I try.
Thank you, Lisa. All right. All right. So why did you learn about online marketing?
Oh, well, I had a business for a number of years called Extra Credits. And Extra Credits' mission was to bring knowledge from experts to the professionals who had accreditation certifications and licenses, but the right knowledge, meaning, you know, people like Sharon Lecter, like Jim Cathcart, like Patricia Fripp. They had all this content available at the fingertips, like great content and experts who really understand the value of delivering education at a much higher level. I wanted to take that knowledge and I wanted to bring it to the market, to accountants and you know, to financial planners and anybody, you know, massage therapists, social workers, anybody who had a professional designation, certification, or license that required continuing education that hated what they had currently offered. And I can remember sitting with Sharon and Michael, her husband, and we were talking about continuing education in the legal space and how he wanted to poke his eyes out with some of the education that he had to take. Now, some of it is compliance, right? It's technically driven, and but some of it is soft skill based or those edge learning skill based. And why are we not offering really good content? Because we have to take it anyways. And so it was a marketing opportunity for those experts, for those thought leaders who already had core content created to position it in new markets or to get it approved for continuing education credits in existing market spaces. And so that was the value behind Extra Credits. Like many things, I was way ahead of the curve. This was pre-master class. And I learned a lot of lessons with extra credits. I learned about marketing. I learned about channel conflict. I just learned an enormous amount of, what's a website, what's load speed, I don't even know where to begin and end with that company and what I learned. And I learned what to do and what not to do. And it doesn't exist anymore, but I still do brokering for a lot of clients who have got content that they want to get into specific verticals that have licenses and accreditations, and they want to be able to get it approved. But that was my first real touch point on social media and awareness and tactical strategies around Facebook business ads, and I learned a lot of lessons along the way. I spent a lot of money to learn those lessons, not anything you could get at a regular institution for education.
How long ago was that?
So I started that company in 2015, and I closed the company in 2019. So it was 4 years. 4 years and hundreds of thousands of dollars. But like, again, I said, the silver lining was the education that I got in the entrepreneurial space, good, bad, and ugly, was phenomenal.
Knowing what you know now, and of course we're in a different environment in 2019. Actually, I would guess that those products would be more relevant now. Do you think if you had to rebuild it, you can do it on a lot better?
Oh, 100%. Yeah. So it was public, that the company Extra Credits went public with its own marketplace in 2018, but it had started the company in 2015 when online learning was really just a whisper of what could it be, right?
Lisa, you're talking to an online professor who started in 2008. Imagine how I felt when I told people I taught online in 2008. They looked at me like I had two heads. And it's only until the coronavirus that people are like, oh yeah, that's normal.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Channel conflict was a big thing. There's just a lot that I learned. So I'm sorry, what was the question again?
What's your favorite drink?
Wow, whiskey.
We're talking about yeah. So, all right. Well, that's, yeah. The reason I asked you about the classes question is because right now, like, there's a big increase in online.
Yeah, and it drives me crazy. It drives me crazy. Don't build the damn thing and then sell it. Sell it and then build it. Like, I'm passionate about this because I have seen amazing humans spend tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars building a course to never sell it, or building the wrong course on the wrong topic. And like, it's not the how, it's the who. Sell it first and then build it afterwards. Don't build it and then try to sell it. Now you need the fundamentals of, what's the course, what's the topic going to be, what are the learning objectives going to be? Yes, but that's all in marketing. That's all in understanding sales, and marketing and sales are different, but they do go hand in hand. So sell the product first and then build it afterwards. Don't build it and then sell it.
Can you elaborate on how would you sell it first and then build it? Your regular.
Yeah. So if I had an online, if I was a thought leader right now, and I'm just going to use a topic like culture, for instance, because I do a lot of work with a company called Belongify that I co-founded. And so it's really about creating conditions of belonging. So if we were to create an online course, I would determine, what does the market need in a belonging course for culture? What are the learning objectives that, would meet the market's requirements or the needs in the market, the gap in the market. And then I would build the funnel for that particular course. And I would gate the content, and I would say, coming, January of 2021, I'm going to be selling a course in belonging. And for you, the sales pitch would be that you're going to get a special price, and buy it at $95. I don't care what it is. Doesn't really matter. And then sell it. Get 100 people, get 10 people. I don't care. Get 5 people and then build it for them and make them raving fans. That's how you're going to grow. You know, it's not about building it and they will come. It's not the field of dreams.
You know, and everything you're saying, I just want to step back for a second. There's a lot of people that would be clueless to even to where to start with what you're saying.
Mhm.
The funnels and all that especially gets people lost. So I just completed 2 courses last week. I have it online, I have it posted as courses on my website. And I got to say, making the class itself was simple, because I was a professor. But now it's done. There's a whole new realm, this whole funnel thing and all this other stuff.
This
It's what you're talking about. And
selling courses, anybody who comes into the market and says, you are going to be a multi-million dollar because you build a course, is full of they just are. It is hard. It takes a lot of money and it is not easy to sell courses. It is not a field of dreams. You know, you've got to build, unless you've got a huge network, you've got a big email data. And I've had
like how many
clients.
million people maybe?
Yeah, like I've had clients who've had, and somebody would say, think that this is big. But it's all in perspective, right? I have 16,000 email database.
That's nothing.
Great. That is an accomplishment. I am not saying that that's not an accomplishment, but use the 40-10-10-10 rule. So 40% of them are going to open your email that you're going to tell them that you have this new course. Now, only 10% of them are going to take action. And only 10% of that 10% are actually going to potentially buy from you. And 10% of that 10% are actually going to buy. You need big numbers to make lots of money.
Thank you, Lisa. So just to follow up on that one point, because I think a lot of people will be a little bit discouraged now.
Yeah. Well, and I don't mean to discourage anybody. I think that's why I always say, don't build it. Don't spend all the money building it. Sell it first, right? Create raving fans of the people and the humans that know, like, and trust you, and grow that audience so that when you do have a product to sell them, that's going to make a difference in their lives. Because people have to remember, it's not about the product, it's about the transformation that you make in somebody's life. And you need to sell the transformation. Where are they today versus to where they want to be tomorrow? That's what your market position is. That's what the sell is.
Okay, that's what you're saying. When you're saying sell it, you're saying actually just grow a following first and then come up with the product. Don't come up with a product without the following.
Yeah, exactly. So, if you've got an enterprise client, lots of people play in the enterprise world, right? Well, you already have a market that's interested in that particular product. They already have users, they might have 100, they might have 500, or might be a big company, that has 15,000 people that are actually going to take your course. That was what I still to this day, truly, Dr. Finance, believe was the brilliance behind continuing education. Those are arenas like yourself, CPAs have to take a certain amount of continuing education. That is a market that needs the education. They have to take it, and they have to take it cyclically, meaning every year, every second year, every third year. And so once you have that customer, you have a lifetime customer, as long as you continue to create great content that makes a transformation in that CPA's life.
Now, Lisa, on a different trajectories, let's say you have a person who already has a following. They create some courses, right? And that could be a success because they already got the following, like you said. But what if they go one step beyond that and they make the connection to a person like yourself that still had a business like X Classes, who already had the platform? So now they can go on the platform and basically you have a built-in audience. So all that funnel stuff, you're passing the stick, you're outsourcing it to someone else, and you're just bringing your expert knowledge. Wouldn't that be the ultimate combo?
Licensing is the key to the kingdom. You've got content, so license it. You don't care. You are an expert who has a course. You don't care where it is.
Yeah, right.
You just care that it's there, right? Then that somebody is consuming it. So license it. Go to the universities, go to other platforms, go to Grant Cardone, go to Sharon Lecter, go and license the content to them. They already have people that are interested in consuming content. That's the key to the kingdom, I believe. I don't believe it's about the platform, the technology platform where it sits, whether it's Thinkific, whether it's Kajabi, whether it's, because now you've got to create this whole of your own ecosystem. But the MP4 files, the video files, the PDFs, the workbooks, the resources, that's the key to the kingdom. That's, you just take that content and license it out to as many places as you can as fast as possible.
We're on the same page, because and a perfect example of this conversation is Brendan Bouchard. So I believe he's an owner to Kajabi now, but he made his success from Kajabi, one of the top platforms.
Absolutely.
And he has on his site, you can actually watch all different classes from many different influencers. For example, Deepak Chopra. So it makes me think, why would Deepak Chopra want to be on Brendan Bouchard? So it's exactly what you said. All these major influencers, they're licensing it out so that they can get exposure to more people. This because Brendan Bouchard already figured this system out. So why try to recreate yourself?
So the key to that is understanding what channel conflict is. So remember that you want to have your course in as many places as possible, but you don't want to create channel conflict at the same time. And what I mean by that is let's say, Dr. Finance, you've got a course, I don't know, what's your course on?
Well, I have several courses. They're with long names, but they have to do, one has to do with kids, teaching kids about money.
Okay, so financial literacy.
Yeah.
There we go. So financial literacy for kids. You're going to try and get that course in as many places as possible. Here's the key though. If you're selling that same course and somebody else is selling that course, you're creating a channel conflict, because whoever has the less amount of money to that course is the winner, right? And so you want to be careful that you don't cause channel conflict with one particular course. That's why Masterclass did this so brilliantly. You know, if Sarah Blakely Spanx has a course at Masterclass, the only place that course exists is at Masterclass. You can only buy that course. You can't go to Sarah Blakely and buy that course from Sarah. You have to go to Masterclass. Now imagine if Sarah actually offered that exact same course. Now you have channel conflict.
Yeah. Well, she can make a variation of it, just spin it a little bit, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, when you are a content creator and an expert, I mean, there's an endless amount of topics to talk about, right? Like, so channel conflict should never be a problem for a knowledge thought leader. If it is, then I would implore you to try to move into a different direction with your career.
That is a brilliant point. And Lisa, if you don't mind, I know this is definitely your show, but you gave me the opportunity to plug my 2 new courses, How to Master Your Budget and What You Need to Teach Your Kids That They Don't Learn in School. Yeah. So that's that. But back to you, though.
Awesome. Awesome. Great. Buy those courses if you're listening.
Those courses. All right. So thank you, Lisa. All right, we're moving along. What are your secrets to successfully networking like crazy? Let me preface this first. So by the way, folks, so Lisa is an unbelievable networker. She actually has a club on Clubhouse called Networking Like Crazy. And some of the people that she knows, she's going to tell you about in a little bit. But so she's definitely proof of applying the skill set of how to market, how to network, and bring it to real life. So again, the question, Lisa, going back to it would be, what are your secrets to successfully networking like crazy?
Don't network like crazy. It's that simple. You know what? It's not about the quantity of relationships you have. It's about the quality of those relationships. And I often talk about the inner circle of trust. And it's really about how do you make somebody from a stranger to familiar, to meaningful, to trustworthy. And when you navigate through that maze, that's when you're actually networking like crazy, because you're building profitable business relationships that are long-term, that are value-driven, that are give first, not ask. And when you figure that out, that's when you build a network that you can rely on, that's got your back. And I often talk about there's 3 types of people. And I've got a new book coming out, actually, another book. And I talk about these 3 types of people. There are activators in your life, and those are people that run alongside you for a moment in time because you are both driven with the same mission, with the same goal, with the same focus. Then you've got takers, and I don't think we need to talk much about takers. Takers are all about themselves, and they see you as a portal to what they're trying to accomplish, but they really don't care about you. And sometimes we don't find out they're takers for a while, right? We've all got those type of people in our lives. And then you have people who are belongers. And when you network like crazy, you build a team of belongers, people that belong beside you, that run alongside you. They're your running mates. They're the people that have got your back no matter what. And they will bring the resources and the plethora of their network. And they are the people that you find out the who can help you. It's not really when you think about networking like crazy, you think about how do you add value to somebody else's life first and foremost, and that is your sole objective of that relationship. The ask always comes, but if you are not willing to create conditions of belonging in your relationships, you will never see success. Not the success that you're looking for. And that doesn't necessarily mean financial success. That might be an emotional success. That might be a relationship success, whatever it may happen to be that you define success, because I'm really getting tired of people defining success by dollars. Dollars are definitely important. There's no question. And anybody said, wow, it's because you don't make enough. You're not a double-digit millionaire. No, I'm not a double-digit millionaire, but I will be one day. And in fact, if that's my goal, then I suck, because double-digit is not where I want to be. I love money. And money is how you create impact, and it's how you create greater conditions for people to belong. And I need a lot of it to do what I want to do.
Yeah, you're on track to be a billionaire.
Well, you know what? Billion means big impact, right?
Exactly.
And that's, and it means networking like crazy to create the greater conditions for people to belong. So we're all billionaires. So we're all driving, with the same force forward. And that's really important. And we do have to have activators, and we do have to have takers along the way, because every single person in our life somewhere along the way is there for a reason. I really do believe that. Sometimes we're not grateful in the moment. I've had some really great relationships that I was highly invested in that went very bad. But I am so very grateful for them today. And I'm grateful to the lessons that they've learned. And I hope that I was able to give them some lessons along the way as well. And it's just the reality of networking with other people.
Thank you, Lisa. That's brilliantly put. So folks, if you have anyone there that's a taker in your life, just flip the table and see the positive to that. And I'm sure you can find it. All right. So thank you.
I think too, I think the other thing too is that you have to remember that sometimes we don't really know everything that's going on in somebody's life in that particular moment in time. And they genuinely might not be a taker. It just happens to be that they are taking as a result of their circumstances in that moment. And so, look beyond the obvious.
Thank you, Lisa. All right, Lisa. So how do you find an expert at anything?
Well, that's all about the who, right? It's all about looking to your network, again, of people, of individuals, to find the answer to the problem that you're trying to have, that you're currently having. So in other words, what I mean by that is I've been really, really good at the what. I can see beyond the obvious. I see through things. So the what is really easy for me. The how is the process, but it's the who that really gets most people stumbled on, right? Because the who is the answer to the how. In other words, what is the process, or what is the answer to the problem that you're looking for? Typically, go and find that particular person who actually has done it before and has solved the problem that you're facing, so that you can fast track. You can overcome that obstacle so much quicker and get to the next goal, to advance your business forward, to advance your relationships forward.
Thank you, Lisa. And that's a brilliant point you made. By the way, I'm hearing the I'm hearing the undertones of your Canadian accent come out and I'm loving it. I'm like, wow, you know, in Clubhouse, you sound like very neutral, but then when you start really getting into passionate about a subject, you know, so we both have that interesting accent thing. And I think that helps us on Clubhouse a lot.
Absolutely. It's funny, when I first started in Clubhouse, there's a gentleman, just trying to think of his name off the top of my head. Anyways, I can't think of it off the top of my head, but he's like, oh my God, I could just listen to you all day long. And I'm like, what? Like, nobody in my whole life has ever told me that, right? Like, that you have this unique voice. And I don't know. I mean, you hear it in your head and it sounds differently, right? So, and I've been told that a couple times on Clubhouse. And so I guess it's the Canadian accent, eh?
Yeah, same here. I was kind of shocked when I heard a few people. And the funny thing is, the people who are saying it are other people with accents. I'm like, I can hear you speak all day.
Exactly. I just remembered who it was. It was Ken Jocelyn. And I'm like, Ken, I could listen to you all day long. What are you talking about? I know instantly. I don't need to be looking at the Clubhouse screen to know that that is Ken talking. That is Dr. Finance talking. There are some people, you know, I'm a huge fan of Split the Difference, Christopher Voss. You
Chris
know
Voss, yeah.
instantly by the sound of his radio voice that it's him. Like, you just know right away, oh my God, Chris is on stage. You don't need to actually see the person to know who they are.
Thank you, Lisa. Slight digression. All right. What do you like best about podcasting? Let's talk about your podcast, because you got an awesome podcast and you have a lot of amazing guests on there. So what do you like best about that? Why do you do it?
Podcasting for me really came at a time when I was scared shitless. Let's put it that way. Like, that's the reality of the situation. That, like, I didn't know how to do it. And everybody said, you know, you need to have a podcast. You have all these amazing people that belong with you, beside you, these thought leaders, these experts that have, you know, all these, you know, years of experience. Why are you not podcasting? Why are you not doing an interview show? And my answer was, because I was afraid to. And so my whole life, I've done everything afraid. Every time that I want to do something, I do it afraid, simply because I don't know how to do it any other way. So I just figured it out. So I found a way to get it done, and I started podcasting, and it brought me to a whole different world of how to do things. And it created, for me, again, it was a process. So if I don't know, I'm just going to find a way to figure it out. And so I just taught myself how to, you know, use StreamYard and how to podcast. And more importantly, I started really deep diving into some of the best hosts and how do they do it? How do they, you know, how do they make such a great experience? Because you can have the best system. In other words, you can have the best background and, you know, best recording studio. But what makes a podcast is you. If you're the person, then the only person that's there, or if it's your guests and you have, you know, a guest podcast. And so I just started thinking about, how do I really just make this an experience where people want to stay and they want to learn, and more importantly, an experience where people want to come and talk to me and have a cup of coffee with me. And so that's where Coffee with Lisa came from.
How many years? Well, when did you begin your podcast?
Oh boy. So I think there's 50 episodes, and I think I did it over 2.5 years.
Wow. Yeah. And
I'm not doing it anymore. You know, it's ran its course of time. I've got a new show coming out here this fall that I'm super excited about. It's called That Problem Solved. There's my shameless plug.
Is that going to be your new podcast?
Yeah, so it's going to be a live stream. Actually, I'm going to try to push it to get to the networks. I've got a great gentleman that's belonging with me. His name is Peter Clark. Peter is an amazing human, first and foremost. I just need to say that. He's an amazing human. He's a philanthropist, but he's also a video genius. I call him the Howard Stern of radio. And him and I have come up with some really great ideas about how we want to live stream a TV show. And then I'm going to rip it to a podcast, to an
Oh,
audio
okay.
version. Yeah.
So you'll take it as in the recorded form and turn it
Yeah.
into podcast
Yeah.
material.
Yeah,
That's really
absolutely.
good. What you do with your other one? You don't want to do it no more? The old podcast?
Well, no, I just, you know what, it had its time, right? Like, I think you have to know when to just say enough is enough, and you know, it's pivoting. We've changed. The world has changed.
Yeah.
I think, you know, we don't need another interview show that I don't need to do. I want to look at a problem and I want to solve it, and I want to solve it within 34 to 45 minutes. And sometimes it's the simplest problem that people are stuck on and they don't know the how. So I want to bring the who.
Wow, I like that. Who were some of the people you studied, by the way, when you said you were trying to figure out how to do the interview? You studied a few people.
Yeah, so Howard Stern was a big one. I looked at, you know, a plethora of content that was online, that was video driven. Some names that you wouldn't know, some names that you do. Ken Walls was another. He was a huge, influence in my life at that time. And as you know, I don't know that there's anybody who's had more live streams than Ken Walls to this day. He streams every single day, and he's been doing it for years. So, you know, those two had a really big impact when I first started. And I went to YouTube and I just started YouTubing, put in there, who knows how to do a podcast? Who's the best podcast host? Who's a great interviewer? And I started just looking at people who are interviewing. Ellen DeGeneres is a great interviewer.
Yeah.
What does she do that's different and unique that other people don't do? That, you know, she's got that unique ability. She's got a distinction factor. What is it? Another gentleman that I looked at was
Well, you had to look at Larry King, right?
Larry King, yeah. Scott McCain was another one. I mean, he builds iconic brands. He talks about iconic brands. He's got that radio voice. He grew up in radio. Like, what does Scott do that's different and unique that I potentially could bring my own secret sauce to? And how do I do that? And so those are some of the people that I really just investigated in.
Thank you, Lisa. All right. So who are some of the celebrities that you work with? So I know you're going back to the networking thing. The proof is in the pudding. Anyone that you want to discuss or mention here? Just some of the fancy people that you're connected to?
I like to keep their privacy. I mean, you can, it's that don't kiss and tell.
Okay. Well, let's put it like this, folks. She's writing a book, her first book. We're going to talk about it in a moment with a celebrity. So actually, I believe that's the next question. How did you meet Jim Cathcart, who is a celebrity, and that's public now?
Yes. So my good dear friend Jim. So I met him through a mutual connection that I actually do business with now, Dr. Tony Alessandra. Do you know Dr. Tony?
I've heard of him several times. I haven't met him though.
So Dr. Tony wrote the book called The Platinum Rule. He's got his PhD in marketing. And the Platinum Rule says treat others how they'd like to be treated versus the Golden Rule, which says treat others how you'd like to be treated. And it's a big, significant difference. And when I met Dr. Tony, I didn't realize that I was actually practicing. I didn't even know the Platinum Rule existed. I knew the Golden Rule existed, and I knew it was flawed in many ways, but I didn't know why. But I met the Platinum Rule and was introduced to the Platinum Rule and Dr. Tony. And Dr. Tony introduced me to Jim. And that's how I met Jim.
Well, I have to meet him because we're both Dr. Tony, right?
That's right. That's right. Yeah. So, so Jim, met Jim. Oh, I don't remember what year it was. 2016, maybe. I met Jim, and Jim and I hit it off instantly. I mean, how can you not like Jim Cathcart?
Yeah, he's amazing.
Yeah. I mean, his How to Believe in Yourself. If you have not seen that TEDx, please, I implore you. I mean, I think it has 2.5 million hits now. It might even be at 3 million now. I don't know. It's been a while since I've looked. But I mean, that's the fundamental of who Jim is. Jim walks and talks what he speaks and teaches and preaches. There's nobody that I know in my world that doesn't walk and talk more than Jim Cathcart.
Yeah, I agree. And folks, Jim Cathcart, if you want to watch the interview with Jim, he was on last week. So definitely check that out. Just type in Dr. Finance and Jim Cathcart, and that will prove everything that Lisa's saying is correct. 2-hour interview. What an amazing guy. I usually don't go that long, but when I have a superstar on stage, I extend it. I mean, he's just incredible. Like literally,
Well, I think he broke a record, didn't he, for you?
Yeah, he broke a record. I mean, he beat Rahila and Mike Alden. The episode before him was pretty close. So, but I mean, it's just the content, the quality of the content that he says. Like I was telling Lisa right before we got on today, I said I felt like I walked out of that. I was like, my life was changed. Just some of the things he said about the way he looked at things were just very, very unique. So.
Yeah, he's a unique perspective. I mean, he's been all over the world speaking on all kinds of stages with all kinds of celebrities, and he's the most humble man imaginable. So I think that, we all have a lesson to learn in humility from my good friend, Jim.
Thank you, Lisa. So now we're going to move in to talk about Jim and yourself. So tell us about your new book, Intelligent Curiosity, that you wrote with Jim that was recently released.
Yeah. So what happened was I never really imagined myself as an author, although I've been working with all kinds of experts and authors over the years. I just never thought about writing my own book. And Jim and I were talking one day, and Jim's like, I've got all this content, and I want to get it out to the world, and I'm trying to find people who want to, write books with me and, license all, he's got 750 hours of content. So if you're looking for content, Jim's he's got, a plethora of it. He said, but I really, I want to write a book. And I'm like, Jim, I don't know how to write a book. How about this? How about we write a book together? And I can learn the process and the system of how to write a book firsthand. I mean, you wrote 20 of them. I've never wrote one. So let's write a book together. And so we did. It was a 2.5-year project. And a lot of chapters we scrapped, and we didn't know what we were going to write on. So we did a lot of Zoom calls and a lot of brain dumping. And we had an amazing editor by the name of Judy Slack, who really helped us and refined. And so in the end, it ended up being the book called Intelligent Curiosity, The Art of Finding More. But when we started, we thought about writing the book network like crazy. But it ended up being Intelligent Curiosity and The Art of Finding More. Yeah.
But you know what? I was thinking about that title last week, Lisa, on the episode with Jim. And the points that he was making about that book, it struck me that couldn't have been a more relevant title to what is going on today at this moment, the great pandemic depression, that I call it. The intelligent curiosity, the way he described that, how people should be not looking at just one news channel. They should be looking at 4 or 5 or more, or all, as many as possible, so that you can make your own decisions. I mean, how relevant is that to the way that people should be thinking today to survive in this world?
Well, you need to be strategic and intentional, right? Curiosity is not just being a looky-looker, right? It's really about being strategic, intentional, focused, looking at the edges of the opportunity, not at the core. We talked a lot about my good friend Merle Hodge, and Merle is all about, he was I think it was for Pittsburgh. He was the running back, and if Merle was always in the center of the field, right, of the football field, he would never become an eligible receiver of the opportunity to get the ball to run down the field, right? He's always on the edges. He's looking beyond the obvious to try to find the opportunity to make the goal, make the touchdown. And so the value of intelligent curiosity is really thinking and being intentional, be more specific with a purpose in mind about how and what you're looking for to find the answers. And that's the magic. The magic is in the edges of the opportunity of the relationship. It's not in the center. And so many people are so focused on the picture that they can't see the picture frame. And the picture frame is on the edges, right? That's where the magic is. That's where the opportunities are. That's where you'll find more.
Thank you, Lisa. Awesome answer. All right, so what? So that's the book, folks. Check it out. It's called Intelligent Curiosity with Jim Cathcart and Lisa Patrick, and it came out last month, right? So,
It did, yeah. It came out a few weeks ago, so super excited. I hope that people enjoy it. You know, it's funny because you write the book and you've seen it so many times, and you've read it so many times that you don't even know if it's getting good anymore.
Yeah, no, at a certain point, you just got to trust your gut and say, all right,
yeah,
you're never going to get, this is what a lot of people don't understand about writing books. It's never going to be perfect, ever. It's never going to be 100% perfect. There's going to be misspellings. You got to live with them. Like there's no way, like take my last book, for example. It's over 500 pages. There's no way that I or my team of editors, even though I read it dozens of times, can possibly have found every single word when you're talking about 100,000 plus words that are constantly changing as you're editing, because every time you edit, it's a new book. So yeah. It's just the best analogy I make is Leonardo da Vinci. He made the Mona Lisa, right? So yeah. From what I heard, you know, that painting was basically still unfinished at the time he died. He walked around with it his whole life because he wasn't happy with it. It wasn't perfect. You know, it's at a certain point.
It's kind of like when you build a house, right? Yeah. When you build a house, you know, you try to think of absolutely everything you can imaginably think about when you build that house, but it's very overwhelming. Then when you're done the house, you think, oh, why did I face that window that way? Or why did I do this? Or if I would have known that, I would have done this, right? Then you go into somebody else's house and you notice the smallest things about their house that if you would have never built that house, you wouldn't have noticed. Like you look at their baseboards and you think, oh my God, there's a flaw in the baseboard. Well, you'd have never looked at the baseboard before you built the house. It's the same thing with doing a book, right? You cannot imagine every single thing that is going to go wrong with that book, or you cannot find every single spelling mistake, every verbiage or, you know, sentence structure or whatever it happens to be. At some point, you just have to let it go. And like you said, just pray in the knowledge that it's good enough.
Yeah, absolutely. By the way, I know you're an interior designer, but do you have a real estate background too? I'm sensing a little bit of real estate knowledge. You're mentioning baseboards and things like that.
We have a real estate portfolio, but I don't claim to be a real estate expert by any stretch of the imagination, although that's changing.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Lisa. Appreciate that. All right. So what is worse, the fear of success or the fear of failure? Maybe 2 or 3 minutes.
I think people think that they are afraid of failure, but I think in reality, they're actually afraid of the success because success holds people accountable. When you're successful, you have to continue to be successful. You have to continue to be accountable to what you're trying to accomplish in your goals. So if you think about that, like if you think about if you have a team, if you are successful, it means that you need to continue to be successful because you need to put food in their mouths. You can't afford to fail. Failing is easy. Being successful and a continued success is hard. And I think people are more afraid of success than they are of failure. They just don't realize that that's actually what's happening.
That is an unbelievable way to look at it. And it explains a lot. Explains why I think majority of people have that they never really overcome the obstacle to grow because they're their own enemy.
Yeah, self-sabotage is real for sure. But I think if at the core of what is actually happening is you now need to be accountable. Once you're successful, you're accountable. And you're not accountable just to yourself and your belief system or your goals. You're accountable to everybody else, because Rome was not built in a day, and nobody built Rome alone.
Mhm.
And so now all of a sudden you're accountable to a number of other people, and that's scary.
Mhm. Thank you, Lisa. Can one book change the world?
I think one book can change a moment in time in somebody's world. But I don't think one book can change the world. It's impossible. There's just too many obstacles, hurdles, objectives, goals, edges of opportunity that have to be explored. So I think it can absolutely change a moment in time for a person, but it cannot change the world.
Well, what if it changed the moment in time for a particular person who happened to have the ability to change the world?
Absolutely, but it still can't change the world. You can only change that one moment in time towards that goal of changing the world.
Okay. Thank you, Lisa.
Do you not agree?
Well, this is your show.
But this is a conversation. So I'd love to explore that more. What do you think?
I think a book can change the world for sure. But it really depends on the circumstance. Like, for example, to really answer that question, you really got to ask, has one book changed you? Not everybody can answer that question successfully. In my life, there's several books that have changed me, like, completely.
Yeah.
Like, literally, the book was done and I was transformed immediately to the point where everything I thought about in life was completely different. Now, I'm just me, but if there was someone else with a lot of power, let's say a top leader, and we can get them to read a book like that and it can transform them, look at all the influence they can impact.
Yeah.
One
I think
person.
though, I think in order to change the world though, is a series of moments.
Yeah, you got your highest
Yeah.
probability for sure doing it that way.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's a sequence of those moments, right? In
Yeah.
order to get to the goal. And so can that one book change history? Without a doubt. Napoleon Hill is a perfect example.
Yeah.
How to Think and Get Rich. That has absolutely changed the world. But it is in combination of other moments in time.
Absolutely.
It's not just that book.
Yeah. Thank you, Lisa. Okay. Is mentoring important? I'm sorry, step back. What role has networking played in your life?
Well,
I
I
couldn't
think we've
skip that question
discussed
for
that.
you. That's the most important.
I'll tell you, and I've shared this story before, and
Uh-huh.
I'm a believer of you should never try to share unique stories on every podcast that you're on. But I will share this. So at one time, I was absolutely petrified of networking. I hated networking. In fact, it stopped me from going to a lot of places. And it stopped me from being curious about the opportunity and finding more in that time, because I was so afraid that it didn't go. And even to this day, I got asked just recently to go to an event. And instinctively in my nature, it was to go, oh, who's going to be there? Who do I belong with there that, can be my running partner, if you will, at that networking event. And I had to put myself into check and go, wait, that's the old Lisa, the young Lisa talking about afraid to go because of the networking, right? I'm an introvert at heart, truly. So I can play the extrovert, but I am an introvert. And so networking is key to the kingdom, but it's the people that you make the relationships at the event. And if you go to the event thinking that you're going to talk to everybody there, or you're going to try to collect as many business cards or QR codes in your wallet, if you will, you are going to be sadly disappointed at the end of that event. Because if you can just meet one person and make a real connection, it could be the key to the next opportunity for you, the next success story, the next whatever it may happen to be in your life in that moment in time. And I think that networking plays a key role in that.
Thank you, Lisa. And Steve Sims, he was on the
Love
podcast.
Steve.
Amazing guy. He has a different view of networking, and it's sort of the same that you're saying, but I think the whole thing, the hang up is the term networking. Most people think like he said, networking means just go into an organization. There's a million people there and taking business cards. What you're saying is exactly what he's saying. He's just saying it in a different way. If you could walk away with one key connection from that event, that's all you need.
Yeah, absolutely. You need to make a transformation in their lives. You need to be unbelievably, distinctively unforgettable in somebody's life at that event. And that means pouring into them, not asking them to pour right into you, right? It's all about a give first mentality. How can you add value? How can you find out more? Ask questions of them about their life, where they are. Not just in business, right? Like, and it's not about asking about the weather. Good Lord, there's nothing worse than somebody coming up. So did you see how sunny it is outside today? In the first 30 seconds, you have 30 seconds to make an impression on somebody. And you want to talk about the weather? Like, it's still to this day, it blows my mind. But anyways, but yeah, so like Steve Sims, I mean, Steve's is a blue fisher at heart, right?
Yeah. So Lisa, this is a perfect question for you. I asked this to Gene Chaskey yesterday and several other major influencers, but a networking expert. I'd love to hear your opinion. If the next Michael Jackson was standing on a corner right now, right, he's just standing there playing a song, and if he doesn't meet the right person, will he ever grow and become meet his fullest potential?
Let me think about that for a second. So if he's standing on a street corner and he doesn't meet the,
he's broke, he's got a world of talent, but he has no money. He's just on the corner just trying to get his message out. He knows no one. We're in the assumption model. He doesn't know anybody with influence. If he just
well,
keeps
I think
standing
that,
there,
yeah, I think number one, he's putting himself out there. He's standing on the street corner. I think that's the key, is he's actually doing something to put himself in the position to get the opportunity for the who, right? I think a lot of people stay confined within their world and don't put themselves out there. You need to be out there somewhere, anywhere, so that they can find you. And if you're
so
not there,
he's
right?
cleared. He's cleared hurdle one. He just has to get that right person, though, right?
Yep. Yeah, and it takes continuous, consistent action. I think that's the problem that most people don't realize, is that you got to get up every single day with that goal in mind and take some kind of action towards that goal. If you're the best hidden secret in the world, you're still just the hidden secret. And I think people just don't want to consistently take the action. You got to keep, when you get a no, to me, a no is just a not yet. Right?
Yeah.
That's all it is. And I want to, you know what, if my bucket is full of no's, I'm doing my job right, because that means I'm out there asking for something. And you just have to keep asking until you find the right door to the right person.
That's brilliant. Thank you, Lisa. All right, we're going to slightly pivot. So mentoring, right? So is mentoring important, and who are some of your mentors?
Mentoring is very important, but I want you to define for me what you believe mentoring is in order for me to answer that question.
Jeez, I'm getting beat up here. I'm just the host.
No, tell me, what do you believe mentoring to be?
Well, mentoring from the perspective of not just coaching, it's something much more than that. It's basically a teacher. So a person who is there to and not just a teacher, like a person who's there to educate you on certain things and also to guide you along into the right path.
When I define mentoring, because
But I don't
one
have
could
an
say,
exact definition.
yeah, no, exactly. Well, and it's all relative to your what you believe mentoring is, right?
Yeah.
I believe mentoring is when you are emotionally connected to that person. You're invested with that person. There's a difference between mentoring and being an expert, or being a coach, or being a guide, or being a consultant. But mentoring to me is you're emotionally invested in that person and their well-being. and you are willing to do what you need to do to help them get to that next level, whatever that may happen to be. To me, that's a mentor. Some people say, oh, mentoring is, you don't get paid to be an expert. Okay, I guess I could take that as being a definition of a mentor. But for me, mentoring is you're emotionally invested in that person.
Well, I'm glad you clarified that up. That's actually, I haven't articulated that well, obviously, today, but I always felt that. And going into this space over the past year, coming from academia, uh, seeing all these, I didn't even know what a life coach was until earlier this year. These life coaches and the coach for this, and then the mentor. I knew there was a distinction, but for me, the idea of a mentor was always something similar to like a martial art teacher, really. Like and you're explaining it well. There is a emotional connection. A student to the master martial artist, the instructor, is actually like almost like a father-son relationship. You respect them because you know that they're teaching you something that you can't learn without them, and in return you give them respect. So there is that connection, and
It
I
can
know a
be
lot of
one
people.
way too, right? Like if you think about it, I can have a mentor in my life that has no idea that I'm their mentee. I'm emotionally connected to them, but they don't know me.
Yeah, through books and
We,
stuff.
we have those, so I think, the mentor, if I'm a mentor to somebody, I am emotionally connected to them. I'm invested to them because I am defining the mentor-mentee relationship. But I think when you think about people who, you know, tell somebody, I've been told I was their mentor and I didn't know who they were. Well, I'm not emotionally invested in that person because I didn't even know they existed, but they're emotionally invested in me. And so it can happen both ways.
So you would call that, from the student's perspective, you would say that you are their mentor. They are
Yep.
correct, right?
Yeah, because they're emotionally invested in me, right?
Okay.
But if I was to say, I am your mentor, Dr. Tony, that
Yeah.
means that I'm emotionally invested in you. I've
Okay.
defined the relationship.
Follow from both sides equals connection.
Yeah, yeah, that's
Right?
true.
You follow, I
Yep,
follow, we're connected. You follow, and I don't follow. We're halfway there.
halfway there.
All right, thank you. But go back to the question though, is mentoring important? And who were some of your mentors?
Yeah, I think mentoring is important. As long as you understand, um, if you're intentional about what the goal of that relationship is, right? And so I mean, I alluded to that a little bit, whether you're the mentee or you're the mentor.
Mhm.
I have had mentors in my life. Patricia Fripp, uh, massive mentor in my life. I am emotionally invested in that woman long before she ever knew who I was. Right. And so
Right.
I followed her career and I drank the Patricia Fripp Kool-Aid and I lived and was hypnotized by Patricia long before she ever even knew I existed. I was her mentoree, but she was my mentor, but she had not defined the relationship at the time. So I think that, that's one particular individual. Jim is a mentor. Now Jim is, and I'm his mentoree, if you will, and I hope that some points I am his mentor as well. I think it all depends on the timing in your life. My dad was a mentor to me. My mom was a mentor. I had teachers along the way growing up that were mentors. Like there's nobody, I don't think, on the planet Earth that hasn't had a mentor at some point in their life.
Why do we have to use the word mentor though? I
I don't
like
know. I hate
teacher
it.
student.
It's kind of like the word uh um authentic. Oh my God, I hate that word. I hate it with a passion. I hate the use
Original.
of it. Now we're just being real.
Yeah.
That's what we are. We're real in the moment, not authentic. We're just being us. We're being real. I think the world needs a lot more real and a lot less authentic.
I agree. I like that one. All right. So thank you. We have a few more questions left, Lisa. Figure about a minute to two. We should
Okay.
wrap up. Good.
Yeah.
We're pivoting into the financial aspects now. So, what are your favorite financial books? if any?
Think and Grow Rich for Women, Sharon Lechter, huge impact on my life. Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill is another one. Let me think. I got to think. Other financial books that have made an impact, directly or indirectly.
It doesn't matter either way.
Okay. Sell Like Crazy.
Sell Like Crazy.
Sell Like Crazy. Huge impact on my life. Brand Story, Donald Miller. They're not financial books, but they're a direct path to create financial freedom in your life and flexibility. And so those had big impacts on my life. I read a book called The Village of Knowledge, and it was by a lady who is at Cal Lutheran University. And Cal Lutheran University is a unique university because it has a village, a retirement home. And within that is the people that live within that home are people that, founder of Trader Joe's, the diaper genie.
Oh,
like
okay.
huge impact on my life in various ways. It was called The Village of Knowledge. And it talks a lot about business principles. Talks a lot about, some of the roadblocks that those, famous brands have had that are iconic today, as Scott McCain would say. And those are financial freedom opportunities. So I think, it's not just about knowing the numbers, but it's about how financially successful can you be, will give you freedom to do what you want to do, give you the flexibility to do what you want to do. You know this better than anyone, Dr. Tony.
Tony's from my friends. That's a friend only name, but I know what you're saying. Yeah. So Lisa, you brought up, before I get to the next question, I want to ask you this because we had a discussion I think a few weeks ago. It was really good. We were talking about brands, right? We were talking about a lot of people in corporate that were like CEOs and stuff, and then they try to step out of that hall, right? They step out of the business, the corporation that they're in, and they become back to ground zero, and they feel like, almost like an infant again, starting all over.
Yeah.
So and this is a side question, but I just remembered, what's your thoughts on people who work for corporations that were big executives that want to start a personal brand, and they never do, and then they wind up just staying with the company and hugging the brand of the corporation itself? What's your thoughts on that? Should they jump ship?
I think the problem is that we live in a time and an age where, whether you like it or not, you have an online footprint. You have a personal brand online.
Yeah.
And it's your decision. It's your choice whether you take control of what that looks like, or you allow the world to take control of it for you. And I think that's the biggest mistake. And I don't care who you are, where you are in business, whether you're corporate, you're an entrepreneur, or you're just starting out and you're, fresh out of college. You have an online footprint. It's up to you to take control of what that looks like. And, one of the biggest mistakes that I see in corporate is that, and regardless whether you're a middle manager, you're, the VP of a company, or you're sitting in the executive C-suite, or you're on the board, is that the biggest brands have recognized the value of the employee being a raving fan. And the employee is the CEO. And I think lots of times we forget that you are an employee of the business, of the organization, and you have a duty and an obligation to really amplify the voice of the organization. And you can do that by aligning yourself and your personal brand with the company. And I think that when you start to think about how do you do that and how do you do it effectively, where you still have the organization and the core of the belief of the organization and the values and the mission, you can run alongside that and do a really good job of it. And the ones that do have an easier ability to transition out of corporate into entrepreneurship than the ones that don't.
Yeah, and this is my take on it. I mean, we could talk about this in Clubhouse. I think we're gonna have a room probably in a few weeks, but this would be a great discussion. I think a lot of this is my opinion. I think a lot of these people are wasting their influence that they have
Yeah.
in these giant corporations. They got this big brand name they're attached to, and they're the CEOs, but then they come out and they're nobody because they weren't preparing ahead of time to keep capturing that influence and funnel at least
Yeah.
a portion of it to themselves. So they're
Well,
doing a
and
disservice to themselves by
they're
doing
doing a disservice to themselves, but they're doing a disservice to the organization. But more importantly, they're not being people first driven. In other words, so what happens is you are a legend in the halls and the walls of the organization. And what happens when you transition out of that organization is how do you continue? The biggest challenge that you have when you leave that organization is how do you continue to make meaningful contribution? How do you build a legacy that is beyond the halls and the walls of the organization? And you walk out of that organization and nobody knows you. And now you've got a big feat ahead of you in how you're actually going to show up as an entrepreneur outside of even the personal brand, right? And so that's a difficult transition for a lot of executives that have been sitting in the C-suite.
this is a common problem, you would say, right?
It's a common problem, right? It's an emotional hurdle that they have to overcome as well. No different than like when we talked about earlier in the show about the military transitioning out. They've been given the processes, the systems, all the guides, taught how to walk, talk, eat. They have all these skills. The difference is that when they're transitioning out of the military, for a large percentage of them, they have these skills that are non-transferable in the civilian life. The CEO has, or the executive or whoever's transitioning out of corporate has a plethora of skills that can be used in the civilian world. They just don't know how to do it because they've had everybody around them do it for them. And now they don't have those resources or those people.
And it's not just corporations. I've actually witnessed this and we're not talking politics, just talking about certain politicians, like people who were mayors or governors or whatever. They had the opportunity too. They were on the news every night, right? They were all over the place. They could have been building their brand. After their 4 or 8 year term, they're done. I witnessed the mayor sitting in the corner 2 summers ago. A former mayor of Philadelphia was just sitting there and like nobody knows him, don't even recognize his name anymore because he didn't do what he was supposed to be doing. He wasn't, and we're not talking about politics, but just basically figuring out a way to get his name right.
Yeah,
So
well, and I think too, this is the other piece of it is that you've got to want to have influence outside of what you're doing. That's not everybody's goal and objective, right?
That's true. That's true.
Like some want to just retire quietly and do what they or move on to the next thing that's not in the public eye. So I think the question to be had is, do you plan on doing something that has influence, that you want to create impact outside of where you are today, right, with a larger group of people? And if the answer is yes, then you need to start thinking about your 5-year, your 10-year plan and what's that going to look like, and take control of the messaging
and your personal brand to ensure you get to that goal, right?
Yeah.
Thank you, Lisa. Appreciate it. All right, sorry for the diversion. I think that was a needed conversation. I forgot to add that. Yeah, because that's a brilliant discussion. I mean, there's so many ways we can slice that up. It's happening so often. All right, thank you, Lisa. So 5 questions left. We can do in about a minute or less. I think we should be good. Do we need money to survive? Easy questions.
Of course we need money to survive. We have to put a roof over our head. That takes money. Period. There's no like, you want to feed your family, you need money. Now you can grow it, but here in Canada, you can only grow it for a certain amount of time.
That's funny. Yeah. All right. And is finance necessary for everyone?
Financial literacy is necessary for everyone. at some point in their life, you got to figure out what a credit and a debit is, and how to use your money to your advantage.
Thank you, Lisa. All right. And how important is having a purpose, and what is your purpose?
I think it is very important to have a purpose. And it's interesting that you asked me that question, because I have really been doing a deep dive into what is my purpose. And I actually don't have the answer for you right now.
And that's
I
okay. That's
yeah,
okay.
you know what? Why do I get up in the morning? There's a number of reasons why I get up in the morning. But why do what is the purpose behind why I get up? I'm still trying to figure that out, full transparency.
But you see, a person like you strikes me very, talk about intelligent curiosity. You were so motivated, like you have so much energy, that the kind of energy that a purpose is driving that. I guess you just haven't described it, but it's
Yeah,
already,
I
it's
haven't
in
figured
you.
out. Yeah,
It's
it's
there.
there. It's
Yeah.
there. It's funny, the great, if somebody was to ask me to help them with their purpose, right? You can't have brand, you can't build a marketing strategy, you can't have a startup without purpose for that brand, for that organization. It is very easy for me to see purpose for somebody else, very difficult for me to see it for myself. But I'm
I
working on
see.
it.
Well, Lisa, if I can help you, because from the outside, I see you as a super connector. Like you really have this skill set, and you know how to make people come together and create brilliant things from that. So, I mean, that could be a purpose right there.
Absolutely. I'll let you know.
All right. Sounds good. Thank you, Lisa. All right. What would you like to accomplish in the next 10 years or so?
Ooh, that's a loaded question. I'm going to take it from the perspective of my daughters, who are everything to me. They are my world, and they are my greatest accomplishment to date. And so for the next 10 years, I hope that I can be a beacon of hope and guidance for them, as they, charter out into the world, the big bad world outside of the home. And that I can play a role in helping them make sure that they can be everything that they want to be and more. That would be my goal for the next 10 years.
And that's a beautiful goal. From a like a business side, what would be your goals? Maybe more books, things like that.
I hope that I can touch as many people's businesses as possible, and I can make their dreams a reality. That would be my goal.
Awesome. Thank you, Lisa. All right, last question. What would you like to be your legacy to this world?
My legacy. What would I want written on my tombstone? That I never lived in a prison of comparison. That I was uniquely me, and I was always real in a moment in time with whoever I happened to be with. How's that?
It's good for you. It's good for me. I like it. All right. All right. Well, thank you, Lisa. So yeah, we're gonna conclude now. But before we do, I'd like to turn the floor over to you. Anything you'd like to say? Products, services, books, or whatever you want to show, your website.
You know what? If you like me, you're gonna find me. Like, I'm just not about the, oh, go here and do this and do that. So you'll find me at lisapatrick.ca or in the clubhouse or on social media. I just want to say thank you for allowing me the opportunity to sit here for the last, 60, 70 minutes and have a conversation. I appreciate everything that you do and all the hard work that this takes. I know what it takes to do something like this. So thank you for the commitment that you have to your audience. I appreciate you very much.
Thank you, Lisa. And same here. I definitely respect you a lot. And that's why I wanted to bring you here and tell your story, So we're going to be doing a lot of amazing things together on Clubhouse, folks. So definitely stay tuned for that. And Thank you. Appreciate it again, Lisa. So
Thank you, Dr. Finance. One day, Tony. One day, Tony.
No, you're Tony. You're already in. Thank you, Lisa. My friend Lisa. So thank you, Lisa. All
Thanks.
right. So, folks, you've been watching the Dr. Finance Live podcast, and I'm your host, Dr. Anthony Criniti IV, also known as Dr. Finance. We have our amazing guest again, Lisa Patrick. Check her out, please. And definitely check her out on Clubhouse too, because that's where you can hear her live on stage. Usually the best place is at the bottom of the bio. I believe you schedule some rooms too, Lisa, right?
Yeah, I don't actually schedule a lot of
You
rooms.
don't?
Yeah, I don't spend as much time in the Clubhouse as I used to, just too darn busy, but I
Yeah.
try to get in there as much as I can, and more from a supportive role of other people's rooms.
That's awesome. And Lisa, she's going to be on our stage. Well, she's a senior member of the club too. So in about 3 weeks, we're going to work out the date. So stay tuned for that. She's going to be the star speaker on a room of 250 to 550 plus people, depending. All right.
Are you talking about Kate and Dan's?
Oh yeah, of course. What it takes to run $1 million biz.
Yeah.
Yeah. So thank you, folks. Again, definitely check out Lisa's website and check out my website for more info, drfinance.info on the window here. And my book's in order. The Necessity of Finance was my first book I wrote for my students a while back, probably about 10 years ago. And that's explains a lot about finance and why it's so necessary. Then I wrote the most important lessons in economics and finance. There's about 218 principles of the most important lessons in history. And then the Survival of the Richest, my last book. Definitely check that out. That's an extension of all the different concepts put into one big ultimate conclusion of many conclusions. So check them out. 2 courses, as I mentioned, as well. And like and subscribe to as many social media platforms as possible. Lisa's on many different platforms, Facebook, Twitter, etc. Also like and follow on this podcast, wherever you're seeing it, whether it's YouTube or any of the podcast directories. So thanks again, folks. Appreciate you being here. We'll see you on the next episode. Thank you and take care. Bye-bye now.
Thank you.